Welcome to Farm Charm Chic. I'm Emily. In today's episode, I have some beautiful fall DIYs for you. These are sure to bring that cozy fall feeling that we're all looking for and all ready for into your home and brighten up your space. If you like crafting, DIYs, dupes, hacks, thrift flips, or just creating in general, I would love if you would consider subscribing. When you do see your favorite project today, remember to hit the thumbs up, but let's go make some DIYs. My mom recently gave me a bag of stuff that she was going to take to the thrift store, and in that bag was a bunch of these little blocks. Now, I remember these from when I was younger. She used to have a lot of fun different sayings that she had on them, cute little designs and everything, but clearly she was done with them and they are not quite my style, so I thought I would give them a little bit of an update. So I'm just taking 3 of these, and there was like 20 or more of these blocks. There's a lot of them, so I've got a lot of DIYs with these coming up, I'm sure. Anyway, I just covered them all in some white paint, just some chalk paint. It did take several coats just because of the dark letters on there. I probably could have sanded them down, but I was feeling, I guess, a little bit lazy this day. And so I just went over and painted them all and gave them a really good coat. Now I'm just trimming some burlap ribbon. You could easily do just some regular burlap or whatever you would like. You could completely skip this step if you wanted to, but I thought it would be kind of fun to add this little burlap on here as a little bit of a texture. So I'm just peeling a couple of the strings off around the edges to kind of fray it. I wanted this to look a little bit rustic, maybe not quite so uniform. I know that the burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree, it seems to, for lack of a better term, fall apart a lot easier. So it could probably look a little bit more rustic because I know that when I've made things with that, I feel like the strings fall out of it really easy, like the burlap weave. I didn't have any of that on hand. So this is just some I had from Hobby Lobby. So I just went ahead and cut this down to size. And then as I did that, I was just peeling pieces off. And then I actually kind of scratched the edges here to make sure it kind of has a little bit more of a rustic. So this is kind of up to you and what your taste is. And then I'm just going to use some hot glue to put on the back of these. Now, before I glue these on, I have all of these little pieces. They have things like this from Dollar Tree, like the little wooden stickers. Some of these are just in my stash. I think they all just came from different craft stores. And I just found a couple of leaves. And I was going to use that little truck up in the corner there on the right-hand side. However, I decided it's a little bit too big for the block. Like it kind of hung over a teeny bit and I didn't love it. So I do end up not using that. But just using some hot glue, I'm just carefully gluing that burlap on. You just want to make sure either wear your finger protectors or be really cautious as you're putting those down because, that burlap, it's going to let that glue seep through. So you just don't want to burn yourself doing this. And I end up doing this on all 3 blocks. I'm just putting these little leaves on here. I thought those were really cute. And originally, like I said, I'd wanted to put that little truck on that block that's on the top there. And so I was going to leave it blank, but it just didn't quite fit and it just didn't look right to me. So I go ahead and cut just another piece of the burlap using the same method and just glue that down for the top one and take one of these cute little pumpkins and I just glue that on. This is just one of the wooden stickers. And you could tailor this to any season or any holiday that you wanted. But this was so simple and it's just cute. It just brings that little essence of fall into your decor. It would be darling on a tiered tray or anywhere that you wanted to set something like this. Even just a little gift to take somebody, so easy, and it turned out so cute. Hey everyone, it's good to see all of you. I cannot believe that we are all the way back into doing fall DIYs. I am so excited. Last year was a very difficult fall for me and I did not get to create all of the fun DIYs. So I'm looking forward to doing that this fall. For those of you that don't know, last September, my mom passed away very unexpectedly. It was like she was here one day and gone the next, and it really threw me for a loop. I went into a little bit of a depression. I stopped crafting. I stopped doing a lot of things. And it's kind of taken me the last year to have a little bit of self-discovery, kind of get myself back on track and kind of pay attention to the self-care aspect of grieving. And I have found something that I'm excited to share with you. I found something called Get Healthy You TV. I am so excited that Get Healthy You TV is sponsoring today's video. I want to share with you a little bit about what they are all about. Get Healthy You TV is your online resource for workouts, health tips, and fitness inspiration. There are several different workouts and categories that appeal to such a wide variety of audience, so you are guaranteed to find something that works for you. Get Healthy UTV is frequently adding new workouts all the time that keep you coming back for more, and they help you stay motivated. You can even join their active community to ask questions, share ideas, and to stay motivated. As a member, you'll have access to hundreds of Get Healthy UTV's workouts and live Q&A sessions with their trainers, where they answer questions and engage with the Get Healthy UTV community in real time. The fun thing is Get Healthy UTV will meet you where you're at. So whether you're needing to start with chair exercises, maybe you're already pretty advanced and you want some HIIT exercises or some cardio, they have that. I personally love doing the dance workouts. I loved the yoga. I did a few yoga sessions with my daughters. That was so fun. And they also have meditation. Okay, now for the really fun part that I'm excited to tell you about. Get Healthy UTV is going to give the first 1,000 of my subscribers that click on the link down in this description box, they're going to give you a full year of premium membership for $1.49. $1.49 for a full year of their premium membership. This is for new members only who sign up, but it's for the first 1,000 of my subscribers. You can join by either scanning this QR code with your phone, or you can look for the link that is in my description box as well as pinned in my comments. I hope that you decide to give it a try. I know you're going to love it. Thank you again to Get Healthy UTV for sponsoring today's videos. Let's get right back into the fall DIYs. This DIY actually is like a couple DIYs all put together in one segment here. So I hope you guys enjoy this. I have these peat pots. I bought them at like the nursery section of my home improvement store, and they're just filled with a little bit of plaster of Paris mixed with water to give them that stability on the bottom. And it took about 24 hours for these to dry, so keep that in mind. But anything in the bottom of them, some marbles, anything is going to work. You just want some stability. Now we have this beautiful collection of fall napkins here, and so I'm just going to kind of use what feels good to me as I go along with this project. But I'm just showing you that you do want to separate the different layers of the napkins so you're working with a single layer. Now using a paintbrush and some water, I'm just going to use this to cut out these designs. You could use scissors, but I like the natural organic edge that you get from doing it this way, because as you see, when you add a little bit of water there or moisture, it lets you tear the napkin, and it tears so easily. It is delicate, but you still can get a really nice clean edge to it. And by clean, I just mean that it's not going to tear in wonky ways, and you get a natural edge which blends in beautifully with your decoupage. So I'm using some Mod Podge, and I'm just going to put this on the edge of the pot. I love this plaid trim on the bottom of the napkin, and I thought this would look so cute circling the top portion of this pot. So I just put a little bit of Mod Podge down. Now it doesn't matter if you use a satin finish, a matte finish, a glossy finish, and whichever one you've got is going to work, so don't really get hung up too much on that. But you can see I'm just putting a little bit of that Mod Podge down, and then I will go in and place down my napkin here, just pushing gently on this and working in sections, so that way I'm not getting too much Mod Podge, I'm not having it get sticky on the napkin or anything. Take your time when you're doing this and just do what looks good, but make sure you do a nice clean job while you're doing it. After finishing the rim of this pot, I'm going to take these pumpkins, and I really liked this napkin and the different pumpkins on here. So you can see I am just using this brush with some water. Now just note that as you're doing this, that the water is going to have a really big like bleed line. So you want to make sure that you're giving yourself enough space to be able to punch your design out or tear your design out without compromising the actual design itself. Now the nice thing about a napkin is you typically have a couple different tries if you mess it up the first time, but you'll get the hang of it pretty quick. And you can see that I'm just punching that out there to have that nice natural edge here. And on this, I put some Mod Podge on the back of it first, so that way I could kind of hold my pot and get it placed on there. And then you'll see how I end up using the Mod Podge on the edges. But I just gently push down with my finger. And this is just so you can get a good bond between the napkin and your pot that you're using. And you just want to be delicate because you are working with napkins. They can tear very easily, but the nice thing is they also go back together very easily, and you don't typically notice if you have a tear or rip, so don't get too overly concerned about that. So I'm just putting a little bit of Mod Podge on the edge. You can see I'll just lift up my edge there, being very careful not to tear this. get that Mod Podge adhesion underneath it, and then I go over the whole top of the design. So once, you can either do this in sections as you place your napkins down, or all over at the end, but you will want to put a nice coat of Mod Podge all over the edge of this, or the outside of this. Now on this bigger pot, I thought I would kind of brighten it up a little bit with a little bit of chalk paint, just with a chip brush here, going over haphazardly, no rhyme or reason to this, just kind of brightening it up, looking like it's aged here. You don't really see too much of it underneath, but enough that it was kind of fun to do this process. So that's up to you, just showing you a different technique there. So now I'm just centering. This is a larger design, which I loved using on this larger pot. But when you get to the bottom here, because it's a little bit too long for the pot, you can see I just run that water along the edge and it tears right off. So that way you can either fold the remainder of it underneath the pot, or you can just have it go right to the edge and have it stop. It's not going to make too much of a difference either way. You'll just want to make sure again that you go in with some Mod Podge and Mod Podge that edge, so you're not going to have it lifting up at all. And then just make sure that you go over the entire design with the Mod Podge. Again, you can do this either in each napkin section that you do, or all over at the end. Whatever you do, just make sure that you do that step. Now I have these cute little tags that I think I picked up. I think these came from Hobby Lobby. You could make your own. You totally skip that step if you want, but I'll show you what I do with those tags. Now I'm just putting some sacks that I had from the craft store down in this pot to give a little bit of volume there. So it's a great way to use those bags if you have them left over, because you want to be able to build up the inside of your pot. And I didn't want to have to waste styrofoam or anything like that. So I just put a liberal amount of hot glue and then some Spanish moss. That's going to give you your base to your pot. And then I have 3 pumpkins for this particular topiary that I'm doing here for my pumpkin stack. All different sizes, going from the largest to the smallest, and you can match different colors, different sizes, different shapes. It's so fun to be able to do DIYs like this. Now in between each layer, I'm going to put a little bit of Spanish moss. I really love the look of Spanish moss with the pumpkins. It kind of gives like that pumpkin vine vibe. I love the color of the Spanish moss. It has a really, that brownish look, almost like a fall look that you get. I just really think that it complements the pumpkins really well. Plus it adds a nice layer of texture and a little bit, kind of softens the look, if you will. So between each layer, just a little bit. You don't have to go overboard. You can put as little or as much as you like. And then I'm just using some hot glue. You could even go up through these and put a skewer down through them to add another layer, to add a little more security if you want. I feel like the glue holds really well. Now I'm using my heat tool there to get rid of any of the little glue webs that you do get from the hot glue sometimes, so that kind of melts those away. So it's kind of a little hack there, if you will. So now I'm just going to trim up the Spanish moss. Sometimes it can look a little shaggy around, and it kind of depends on the look that you're going for. Sometimes you may want a little bit more of a shaggy look. It depends on how much texture and how wild you want it to be. I just thought I needed to trim it up a little bit. So now I'm moving on to my littler pot here, and again just pushing one of these plastic bags down here, tissue paper, some of the paper that they wrap your breakable items in from like the craft store, anything like that, paper towels even, something just to stick to build up the inside of that pot so you can put your base layer of the Spanish moss here. And again, I just use hot glue and I'm just pushing that down, almost making like a little nest for your pumpkins to sit on. Now I'm doing my smaller pumpkin stack with just 2 pumpkins. I thought that 3 looked a little bit big for this particular size of pot, and I like the variation if you're going to stack them together or display them together, that one has 3 and one has 2. I think they complement each other really nicely. So now just putting a very liberal amount of hot glue. I am just going to set that right in the middle of our nest that we made with the Spanish moss and just hold that down until it gets a firm grip there. And then I do go around the edge here. You can see just putting a little bit more hot glue for a little bit of extra security in there.
On this one, I do the same thing with the Spanish moss. I just put some hot glue on the top of the pumpkin and place a little bit of that down, just a little bit, just enough to add a little variation between each layer. And then I will take my smaller pumpkin and go ahead and put some hot glue on that. And then I just place that down on top of that Spanish moss and the other pumpkin. And that's all it is to get these to stick together and have a cute little pumpkin stack. Easy peasy. Now these cute little tags, I thought this would be fun. It's kind of like a burlap material and it would be cute just tying it on as is, but I wanted to have it look a little primitive. So I took some antiquing wax on a baby wipe and rubbed it all over. You could also soak it like in coffee or tea. You could even put a little bit, like spray it with some Mod Podge and some cinnamon on there. Any way that you would want to age this would be great. The cinnamon would really smell really good. I've even seen people use like pumpkin pie spice when they've done these to have a little scent go with it, and I'm sure it smells delightful. So now I'm just going to tear a little bit of the edges to have a little bit more of a look of rustic look there. And so I'm just using my weeding tool to kind of pull out each little thread. Again, this is just a matter of taste, what you decide to do or have a tag on there. Anything is going to be great. Even just leaving it as is would be totally fine. But I like to do a little bit extra every once in a while. So now I am just going to put some Mod Podge on here because I wanted to have it creased or kind of wrinkled like it had been sitting around for years, and I thought the Mod Podge would help it dry with a little bit of that crease staying in there, which it does. So I just completely coated the front and the back, and then I just kind of put it in the position I wanted and let it dry. You could even use some of the little Dollar Tree clamps to kind of help keep it in a creased position. Now I'm just putting a little bit of twine back on here, and I'm going to tie this onto my pumpkins. And I went just one pumpkin layer down to tie that so that way it would hang really nicely on the side of that. Now how you do this next part is totally up to your taste and your preference. You could tie this off and cut all the little strings so you didn't see those hanging down at all. I chose to leave the tails long and make a finger bow by wrapping some twine around my finger several times, maybe 8 to 10 times, and then just tying that in the middle with another piece of twine to make a nice sized finger bow there. And I glued that on right where those tails were, and then just trim them up so they're not really too long. So that's just a matter of personal preference there. And then look at how cute these pots. I thought I would just show you up close this cute little pot, how all that decoupage and the napkins turned out. I just think it turned out so cute. Now on this one for the tag, I felt like it needed to stick up a little bit more, so I put a little glue underneath it so that way I could kind of control how it fell on the pumpkin stack, so that way it would pop up a little bit more. I feel like this project was a little lengthy, but I think these turned out absolutely beautiful. It was worth it. I just love a good pumpkin stack, and I feel like having that custom pot that I did with the napkin and the decoupage on those, I just think that really sets these apart. And how fun are those? Now, if you didn't have pumpkins to do in a stack, you could easily do even just one pumpkin on these pots or anything else. I just think having those cute pots gives you such a good base to start with. What do you guys think of these? Let me know down in the comments.
This is another one of those projects that's really fun to do with your leftover fall floral scraps that you might have. This is just a little votive from Dollar Tree. It's from a number of years ago. My daughter was cleaning out her room and she was kind of done with some of her little trinkets and things, and this was one of the pieces she gave to me and was like, "Mom, can you do anything with this?" And I thought, I'm going to turn this into a pumpkin. So you'll have to let me know if it actually looks like a pumpkin in the end. But I did just paint it with some pumpkin Waverly chalk paint to get that nice orange color there. And then I'm just going to glue some styrofoam in there so we can get to putting our little bits of florals in there. Now I'm just going to put a good layer of the Spanish moss on the top here just with some hot glue. Whenever you're doing this with Spanish moss and hot glue, just know that that hot glue can seep through there and burn your fingers really easily. So wear finger protectors or just be very aware of that when you're doing that. I just am speaking from experience of burning myself more than once, many times actually, when I'm doing this process. So just be careful. Now I just have some different little scraps here. You can see off to the side there, I had originally had those flowers. I thought maybe I would use some of those, but I ended up just taking a couple little sprigs off of there. I have a lot of florals that I've just picked up at Dollar Tree or the craft store over the years that I'll just take a little piece here or a piece there, and even when I'm done with them and have some extra little pieces, I just keep them in a bag with my fall crafting stuff. So that way, because you're always just looking for a little bit of this or a little bit of that, and it's fun to have a project that you can kind of pull those out and use those for. So you can kind of see here, I'm going for a little bit of an asymmetrical look. Now this is a little stick from our farm. I gathered a bunch of sticks last fall that I ended up using for some fall and Christmas projects. So it's always fun to have those on hand. But that's my pumpkin stem, so you'll have to just keep that in mind as we're going on here. And I just kind of was anything orange or red or yellow, kind of adding that in. And I had this little succulents that was from Dollar Tree from another project that I had, and so I just kind of stole it from that and stuck it in the side there. And then I'm just gluing a little bit of reindeer moss, just little scraps that I have, just to kind of bring a little bit more greenery into that Spanish moss. But I think this looks really cute. I don't know if it necessarily looks like a pumpkin, but I'm going to go with it. It looks fall, regardless of whether it looks like a pumpkin or not. But I just think this would be so cute on a tiered tray or a shelf, just to have a project to do something with all of those little bits of florals that you might have, or a votive that maybe you're done with. It was just kind of a fun project to repurpose this, and I think it turned out really cute. What do you guys think? Hiding in my stash, I found this Easter tag sign from Dollar Tree. I'm just going to take my emery board and file off as much glitter as I can. I then will take some of this brown craft paper and I will cut it to size, and then in order to make this fit the best that I can, I'm just going to lay it on my sign and I will run my finger over the edge of the sign to indent that shape of the sign into the paper, so when I go cut it with my scissors I can get the closest shape that I can. To adhere this to the sign, I'm going to use just some trusty old glue stick and some hot glue. I'm going to do this for a couple of reasons. First and foremost is there is a lot of glitter that is on this sign, and this will contain any that is left. We all know how much Dollar Tree loves their glitter. I swear they must own stock in a glitter company or something because they use a lot of glitter. So it will contain that. And the next is it's just obviously going to cover the design that is there up. It takes less paint and it is going to make it look a little bit more high end, kind of take it to the next level. So I just put my hot glue around the edge, and then once I place that craft paper down, I use my Mod Podge roller to flatten that out a little bit, and that just really helps adhere that. Then I'll just take my emery board and in a downward motion, I will just file off the edges of that craft paper, and that's going to give it that very crisp look. On the top and the bottom of the sign, I am going to put this cute little pumpkin craft paper that I did get from Hobby Lobby, and I'm using my ruler to get as straight of line as I can, and then to keep that straight line, I will just use the edge of the paper. You can kind of see how I'm doing that there. And then the same thing, I will just rub my finger over the edge of the sign to indent that, and I will go in with my scissors and cut it as close as I can. And then same thing on this paper to get that crisp edge. I just use my emery board. You can use a finger sander, sandpaper, anything that you like that works, and just do it in a downward motion softly, and that will just give you that crisp, clean edge. And then I will do the same thing on the bottom of this to add that same craft paper. So again, I just line my little paint stir stick there up on the edge of my tag sign, and then kind of eyeball where I want my paper to go up to. And then I will use the other straight edge of this paper to use as my top line. That will give it that crisp, clean, straight edge on the top there. You can see how I do that. And then of course, the same motions here
put your finger or to indent the sign. And then actually, I guess this one I don't really need to do that because you can just cut it since it's straight as close to the edge. And then you'll just sand off the edges of the paper like this. So I did use my Cricut cutting machine. You can use any type of rub-on transfers or stickers. If you are at all familiar with my channel, you know that I absolutely cannot freehand things no matter how hard I try. It is very frustrating to me. And as much as I would love to perfect that, I just don't have the patience to do it. So I did use this little design that was in Cricut Design Space to cut these words out. So, and if you guys have been here for a little while, you know that I have lost my Cricut scraping tool and I found it. So I'm so excited that that is back in my life and I can stop using my hotel key momentarily until I lose it again, I'm sure. So I'm just going to push this down onto my sign here. Farm Fresh Pumpkin Patch. I just love the font that was on that. And then it also had this little You Pick sign that I'm going to put down there on the bottom. And as you can see in the upper left-hand corner, I have this darling little truck that I got from Hobby Lobby. I think it was like $2.99, and then of course they're 40% off. I'm just going to glue this on there. It will give it that cute little three-dimensional look. And I'm just using hot glue for this. And I thought this was the perfect way to use this little truck. It would also be super cute on like a tiered tray or something. But I just love this little sign that I'm making. And I'm just using my little weeding tool. You could use whatever to stick through where that hole is up at the top of your tag sign, because I'm going to use some rope to stick through here so that way we can hang our tag. So any kind of twine or string or whatever you have that you want to use to do this with will work. I just unraveled some Dollar Tree rope and tied a knot into the end of one of the little strands, and then I just stuck it through as you saw there. And then on the knot portion, I just put a little bit of hot glue under that. That's going to make that knot so it doesn't slip up at all. You never see it and it'll stay secure. And then just do some Mod Podge. You probably maybe want to do that before you glue your truck on, but I kind of forgot. But what do you guys think of this? I'm just smitten with this. I think it's absolutely darling. The most darling yarn was the perfect pumpkin color at the craft store the other day. And I thought, how can I make a little teeny pumpkin? And it kind of came to me that, oh, you could probably just use a pool noodle. So I do kind of cut this down to the size that I want. And then I do just kind of trim around the edges so it's not such a harsh line there. So that way it's kind of a softer, more of a pumpkin shape, I guess you would say. It doesn't have to be super exact. You can kind of, once you get the yarn on here, kind of have a little bit of leeway, like it kind of just looks like a pumpkin because it's orange and you put a little stem on it. So you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. But I do kind of trim this out to kind of make sure that it at least sits flat, so that way you've got a good surface to begin with. This is the yarn that I found. I just love this. It is a thicker yarn. You guys, I know nothing about yarn, so if my yarn lingo is off here, I do apologize, because I don't really deal with yarn that much, so I don't know all the terminology. But anyway, I absolutely loved this color. So I do just kind of unravel it here, and I unravel quite a bit because I'm thinking if I'm going to wrap this around, I need a lot to cover so you don't see any of this fluorescent yellow or green or whatever color you would call this. So I just, once you loop it through, I just tie it off and then just cut that little hanging piece off there. And that's how I started out. And then I just put a bunch of the painter's tape on the end of it, so that way you can kind of feed it through. And trust me, by the end, you're going to be glad that you put that on the end, so that way, because it gets pretty thick in the center there, so that way you have something nice to be able to pull it through. So again, this is just as much as like I put it through, I pull it all the way and kind of line it up so that way it stays pretty uniform. You know, I want to say it took me about a half an hour to do this, so it doesn't take a whole long time, but sit and watch like a program while you're doing this, and you just pull it through. Be very, very careful not to get this tangled up, because that is extremely easy to do. But I just pull it through one side and then pull it all the way, turn it and put it through the other, just looping it around. It's not rocket science. It's so easy. And you kind of can see when it comes together, I'm like, oh, this is going to be really cute. I really do think this turned out so fun. And I do, I go all the way around the bottom layer, making sure that that is completely covered. You can see there. And then I just kind of go in with some extra all the way around until I feel like I can't fit any more through. And then as I put it down, I kind of smush it a little bit, but I think it's so cute. And I do for this one, for the stem, I do take just a little bit of a handle off of one of those foam brushes that I had left over. I've started saving those foam brushes and just cutting the little handles to use as little extra dowel pieces when you need them. So I just cover this in antiquing wax, and then I do take a little bit of hot glue and just stick it down into the pumpkin itself. That way it stays really well there. I just think this turns out so cute. Here's a look at this cute little pumpkin in my tiered tray. I think this turned out absolutely darling, and it's so simple that I think anybody could do this. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to watch today's video. I really hope that you enjoyed today's projects. If you did have a favorite, always let me know down in the comments. It is so fun reading which projects that you guys liked the best. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe if you'd like to see more videos. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Happy crafting! If you like the video that you just saw and you want to keep crafting together, here's another video that you might enjoy. And as always, remember to like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.